Somehow during the Christmas season, I managed to miss the movie Jackie about Jackie Kennedy, but I saw it recently twice as I had a long flight to the East Coast and back, and it was on the airplane system. So I watched it, most of it twice, and like many people, I was struck by its high quality. It's kind of moody European style, the very high quality of the acting, its historical verisimilitude. Those who lived through the JFK assassination and funeral, are struck by how true to life the movie is. But I'll tell you what surprised me, and I wasn't expecting it at all. The scenes between Jackie Kennedy and a sympathetic priest. The priest is played, by the way, by the great character actor John Hurt. Important to me because he's part of my favorite movie, Man for All Seasons. John Hurt played the nefarious Richard Rich, Rich had promised man nothing to give his soul for the whole world, but for Wales. That was the very young John Hurt. This was his last movie. So he died just weeks after filming the scenes in this movie. Anyway, what struck me was it would be a great little primer for anyone involved in pastoral counseling to watch how this priest deals with this woman in very deep mourning. So, as everybody in the whole world knows, on November 22nd, 1963, Jackie Kennedy was thrown into a spiritual and psychological maelstrom. Not only did her young husband die, but he was murdered. Not only was he murdered within inches of her face. So she was literally showered in his blood. This appalling tragedy, furthermore, she had to explain to two little tiny children. And she had to mourn now in front of the entire world. And so, as everyone that's lived through that time knows, Jackie Kennedy became a sort of icon of innocent suffering. How do you explain what this woman was forced to go through? So, in the days after the assassination, her suffering is so acute that she's basically asking God just to take her life. Her brother-in-law, Bobby Kennedy, who was a fairly plugged-in person religiously, approaches her and says, "Jackie, I think you should talk to a priest." And she does, and hence the scenes with John Hurt unfold as she lays out her burdens to this priest. So I wanted to talk about a couple of these scenes that struck me as really powerful. In one of them, she says to John Hurt's priest, "God is cruel." What many people going through terrible suffering will feel that God is just cruel. He says, "Oh, no, you're getting in trouble now because God is love and God is everywhere." And then she retorts angrily, "Was he in the bullet that killed Jack?" And the priest responds correctly, "Yes." "Is he in me now?" she says. And he says, "Yes, of course." Then she says, "Well, then it's a pretty funny game he's playing, hiding all the time." To which he responds, "The fact that we don't understand what God is doing isn't funny at all." So a simple scene, a simple exchange. But here's what struck me. The priest very deftly moves in between two extremes. On the one extreme is, well, I guess God isn't involved in this at all. Either there is no God, or if there is, he's so distant, he's not involved in our suffering at all. That's one way to handle the problem. The other one is to give a sort of pat answer, like, "Oh, sure, God did this because of that." It's very clear. Well, he doesn't do either one of those things. Was God in the bullet that killed Jack? Yeah, because God is the source and ground of all existence. Is God in me now? Yeah, of course he is, because God is closer to us than we are to ourselves, right? So he's not going the deist route of, some distant God. On the other hand, there's nothing funny about the fact, he says, that we don't understand what God is up to. So present, yes. Involved, yes, of course. But precisely how? Corresponding to what kind of simple formula? There, we don't know. And to stay in that kind of middle space, it seems to me, is the right space. Now, a very similar thing happens in a later conversation. Once again, they sit down for conversation, and Jackie says to the priest, you know, I just wish sometimes I had married a lazy, ordinary, ugly man. Like, you know, why did I go down this path that's led me to glamour and fame, but also to this terrible suffering? What if I just had lived an ordinary life, you know? So sensing her suffering, he says to her, let me tell you a parable. He then unfolds the story from the Gospel of John of the man born blind. Jesus confronts the blind man, and his disciples say, who sinned? Who caused his blindness? His own sin or that of his parents? Jesus says, neither one. Rather, his blindness was allowed so that the works of God might be done in him. He then turns to Jackie and he says, you are blind. And I want to read exactly what he says because it's neat. Right now you are blind, not because you've sinned, but because you've been chosen, that the works of God might be revealed in you. Again, it's a very interesting theological and pastoral balance being struck. Is he opting for this easy, you know, let's explain the whole thing away with God doesn't exist or God's just distant? No. God is very much involved in this whole process. At the same time, he's not providing her with some kind of ready-made, pat answer according to the law of karma. You know, oh yeah, it's because of this that happened. Because of your sin, this happened. Rather, he puts the focus on God and God's involvement, that the works of God might be revealed in you. What are those? I don't know. Maybe only in time. Maybe only in the next life will we fully know what those works of God are. And mind you, too, that he carefully chooses the word chosen. You were chosen that the works of God might be revealed in you. That theme of election or choice is really fundamental in the Bible. Israel's a chosen people, right? And within that chosen people, God chooses Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Joshua, Samuel, David, Solomon, Ezekiel, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Peter, James, John, etc., right? People are chosen. You say, oh, isn't that great? I was chosen. But name one example of a chosen person who doesn't suffer in the Bible. Again, go over every one of those names I just did. Stories of Abraham, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Ezekiel, Isaiah, Peter. Name one exception to that rule, that those who are chosen by God don't suffer. No, it's often through the suffering that the works of God are being accomplished. Again, not bad as a deft theological and pastoral addressing of this problem. Which is why I think seminarians training to be priests, let's say ministers and priests involved in this work, seeking to know how to deal with people during times of great suffering, they could do a lot worse than to watch these scenes in the movie Jackie.